I mean, this is a question I would have for the panel.
Mm-hmm.
Whether we want notification of no harm events and whether we're going to find that in the medical record.
Thoughts from the panel about that?
This is Nancy with a question. Is it theoretically possible that there could be a no harm event that might reveal a subsequent outcome or effect?
Yep.
And therefore, for the patient to be aware, part of letting them know this occurred, we do not believe there was any harm. However, you might want to look for X or Y or Z, or in the future, blah, blah, blah. That's the only reason I think a no harm event should be part of the patient notification, is if in fact there are implications for the patient's health and ongoing wellness. Thank you.
So just to get some clarity, are you saying that no harm events should not be, the patient should not be notified?
No, I'm saying the opposite. If in fact it's theoretically possible that a no harm event today could post-discharge reveal an effect, that the patient needs to know that the no harm event occurred and perhaps be informed of the potential future effect.
They might get sensitized to something, for instance.
Exactly. That's a great example. I'm just thinking, does no harm today mean no harm forever?
Correct. So you were saying that they should, is what I'm hearing, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The question is, do we know how often this is being documented?
In my organization, never.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the HIT comment before about, well, are they going to be really documenting this in the patient's record? Now, maybe document somewhere else, maybe risk management, but I don't know if that's going to be in the EMR.
Yeah, in my organization, it'll never be there.
I mean, if it's never there, then do we need to ask the question? I mean, it's an important question, but if we're not going to find it, or if it's always going to be, can't tell.
So let me rephrase that question. So do you think it should be documented?
Well, even to back up farther, do you think no patient should be notified of no harm events if there is the potential for a subsequent effect? And I think the answer is yes. So then the question is, should it be there? And the answer would be yes. And then the third question that's been asked is, will it ever be there? And the answer so far is no.
Right.
Yep.
So does that mean we don't do it, or does that mean we do it because we believe the two previous shoulds matter? Thank you.
I mean,
and I defer to the wisdom of the group on this.
Now, clearly, if this were event reporting, we would want to encourage the reporter who's on the clinical side. I think it's going to be different in terms of the yield from the abstracting side.
Right. Yeah,
So,
I'm sure we all agree that people should be notified either way, but at the end of the day, is it going to be in the record for someone to find this through an abstract? Now, if people don't think it's going to be, it's not part of a current EHR system, then should the question be asked? It's not about notification; it's whether that's going to be documented in the record.
So this is Henry, and let me just make a comment. Again, I'm looking at from the NQF site the actual commenting tool that shows the breakdown. So under 1.0, if I was an abstractor, as I understand it correctly, I'd be looking at patient information 1.0. 1.1 is identifying information about the patient. 1.2 is patient harm. and I'm looking for three things: death, harm, or no harm. And then 1.3 is notification of the patient's family or guardian. So I would be looking for that independent of whether there's death, harm, or no harm. So if I coded no harm, and in fact I found notification of the patient, then my abstract would reflect that. So the way this is set up, it's not asking under the no harm whether they were notified. It's the question about notification is separate and independent of the three categories of harm.
Right. So we don't have to make
so
it
the
more
question is
specific.
whether we need to do anything, or actually as the data begins, and maybe for Ira and the rest of his team, as the data begins to come in, what they're actually seeing in terms of what the abstractors are finding.
Fine.
So basically, what we've said is that when there is no harm, independent of that, notification would be present, and likely would go unchecked because it's uncommon to find notification in the presence of no harm. But do we need to change anything? And the answer is no. The question was, should this be specified, whether it applies? And so as you're looking at the document, it seems to suggest that it does apply, notification. It's independent of whether there was harm or no harm.
Yep, that's
correct.
That's how I read it, so we don't need to make any change.
No, it's there.
It's there.
Yep.
Okay. So let's move on to outcomes of interest. And Ira, I assume this is your comment as well?
Yeah.
Do you want to just explain what you were focused on here?
It relates to what we talked about above. That it's all elsewhere.
Okay. So knowing that, what suggested change would you make?
Well, I think we basically done the suggested change up above, and that we wouldn't need in the event description for the hospitalization information. We wouldn't need the stuff about the outcomes.
Okay. So we've handled this issue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Implicitly.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to healthcare-associated infections. If we can pull that up, the first comment here is definition of an event. Asymptomatic CAUTI indicated by both of the following. And I don't see both the following. I just see this should be called asymptomatic bacteremia CAUTI a la CDC.
Somewhere along the way, the word bacteremic got dropped, that's all.
Yeah, but it's really bacteriuria, not bacteremic. Right?
No, it's bacteremic. It's basically for CAUTI, you either need, you'll always need a culture. Generally, you also need a symptom. But if there's no symptom, a blood culture with a urine culture satisfy. And I'm speaking very generally of what NHSN has.
Right.
So it's the bacteremia replaces the symptom in CAUTI.
Right.
And so the word bacteremic got dropped from what you see earlier as asymptomatic CAUTI. Instead of saying asymptomatic CAUTI, just to be consistent, it would be asymptomatic bacteremic CAUTI.
Well, but what my concern is, there can be a lot of CAUTIs without bacteremia.
Right, but there's two approach. I mean, the logic basically finds out whether there was a symptom. If there wasn't and it looks for the bacteremia. It's just a way of separating the two groups. The symptomatic CAUTIs and the asymptomatic bacteremic CAUTIs.
But Yeah, I guess I'm confused because when I think about this as an ID doc, I think about symptomatic CAUTI and asymptomatic CAUTI.